Young and the Restless spoilers. Nikki's fury toward Victor does not erupt all at once. It accumulates slowly, poisoned by repetition, by the same war being fought again and again under different disguises, and by the realization that the battle against Jabot has ceased to be about business and has become a personal obsession Victor refuses to release. What finally breaks her is not a single decision or insult, but the cold certainty that Victor no longer hears her at all. When she confronts him with an ultimatum in the endless assault on Jack and Jabot, or risk losing what remains of their marriage, Victor does not hesitate. His response is swift, brutal, and humiliating. He orders her out of the Newman Ranch as if she is a liability rather than his wife, as if decades of shared history can be erased by the stroke of his authority. The moment Nikki leaves the property, the place that once symbolized security now transformed into exile. Something fundamental fractures inside her. This is not merely a marital dispute. It is the confirmation that Victor will always choose power over partnership, dominance over love, and war over peace. Wounded beyond pride, stripped of her place and her voice, Nikki does not seek comfort from friends who might offer platitudes or from family who would urge restraint. Instead, she gravitates toward the one person who understands the cost of Victor's cruelty not in theory but in lived experience. At the Genoa City Athletic Club, surrounded by muted elegance and familiar ghosts of past encounters, Nikki finds Jack. Her composure unravels as she confesses what Victor has done, how effortlessly he dismissed her pain, how his obsession with Jabot has consumed what little compassion remained in their marriage. Jack listens without interruption, his empathy rooted not only in affection, but in memory. He has seen this pattern before, has watched Victor lash out when challenged, has watched Nikki absorb the damage while convincing herself that endurance was the same as strength. Jack does not need to exaggerate Victor's faults. The truth is already heavy enough. His presence alone, steady and unjudging, allows Nikki to acknowledge what she has been avoiding, that her marriage is no longer broken in theory, but shattered in reality. As they sit together, Jack's own history with Victor rises to the surface, particularly the moments when Victor weaponized Nikki's vulnerabilities, dismissed her struggles, and treated her devotion as something owed rather than earned. Jack remembers the aftermath of the eyes scandal, how Nikki was left emotionally exposed while Victor remained focused on control and retaliation. He recognizes the exhaustion in her posture, the quiet devastation of someone who has spent years defending a man who no longer defends her. Without crossing any overt boundary, Jack becomes a mirror for Nikki's pain, validating it in ways Victor never has. What begins as comfort evolves into something more dangerous: recognition. They recognize each other as survivors of the same storm, as casualties of Victor's endless need to win. And in that recognition, a door long sealed begins to open. The shift is subtle, almost imperceptible, carried not by words but by silence. Nikki and Jack share a moment where loneliness presses in from all sides, where the past feels uncomfortably close and the present unbearably empty. Their eyes meet, lingering a second too long, and within that pause exists the weight of everything they have been to each other and everything they never allowed themselves to become. This is not a sudden passion or reckless impulse. It is the quiet resurgence of something unresolved, something layered with regret, affection, and unfinished emotional business. They do not name it, perhaps because naming it would make it real, and reality already feels unstable enough. Yet restraint erodes under the need for solace. What follows is not an impulsive decision made in the heat of the moment, but a calculated, almost somber agreement to seek comfort away from prying eyes. Nikki and Jack arrange a private meeting at an upscale hotel in Genoa City, a space chosen not for romance but for anonymity, distance, and the illusion of control. This meeting is framed in their minds as temporary, contained, and necessary, a moment of escape from the relentless pressure of their lives. To protect themselves, they register under false names, treating secrecy as both shield and confession. The act itself is telling. They know, on some level, that what they are doing cannot withstand daylight, that it exists in a moral gray zone shaped by pain rather than desire. Inside the hotel, everything, is deliberately understated. The luxury is impersonal, the quiet heavy with anticipation and restraint. Nikki and Jack are not there to rewrite history, but to survive the present. The false names on the registry serve as thin disguises for truths they are not ready to confront, yet the familiarity between them betrays every attempt at detachment. What they seek is not betrayal for its own sake, but understanding, warmth, and the comfort of being seen without judgment. Still, intention does not erase consequence, and the illusion of privacy proves dangerously fragile. Unbeknownst to them, their effort to remain invisible fails at the most mundane level. A hotel employee accustomed to discretion, but motivated by allegiance rather than ethics, notices inconsistencies that cannot be ignored. The recognition is not immediate, but once it settles, it sharpens quickly. Nikki's bearing, Jack's presence, the tension they carry, these are not the mannerisms of strangers. This employee, who maintains a covert connection to Victor Newman, understands the value of information and the power it holds. Without alerting anyone else, the employee documents the details, the room, the timing, the aliases, and prepares to deliver them to the one man who thrives on such revelations. The message reaches Victor with devastating precision. Every detail confirms what he has long suspected and quietly feared, that Nikki's loyalty was never as absolute as he demanded, and that Jack Abbott remains a persistent threat not only to his empire but to his marriage. Victor's reaction is immediate and volcanic, fueled by a mix of rage, wounded pride, and vindication. The report does not merely inform him, it validates years of paranoia, resentment, and unresolved rivalry. In his mind, the past has repeated itself, and Nikki's actions recordless of context become proof of betrayal rather than a symptom of abandonment. Victor does not reflect on his role in driving her away. Instead, he hardens, convinced that this discovery absolves him of guilt and justifies whatever retaliation he chooses to unleash next. As Victor's fury builds, the implications ripple outward, threatening to consume not only Nikki and Jack but the fragile equilibrium of Genoa City itself. What began as a search for comfort has evolved into a catalyst for escalation, one that reopens old wounds and sets the stage for a reckoning far more destructive than any corporate battle. Nikki and Jack remain unaware of the storm gathering around them, suspended in a moment they believed they could control. While Victor sharpens his response with the certainty of a man who believes he has been wronged. The question is no longer whether secrets will surface, but how devastating the fallout will be when Victor decides that exposure, punishment, and revenge are the only acceptable outcomes, and whether this time the damage will be irreversible. The door does not merely open, it explodes inward under the force of Victor's rage, the sound sharp enough to fracture the illusion that this room was ever a safe refuge. The intrusion is violent, absolute, and merciless, transforming the private space into a tribunal with no warning and no mercy. Victor stands there, his presence filling the room with a suffocating gravity, while Diane remains just behind him, frozen in a moment that will stain her memory forever. What they see is not filtered through context or explanation, only through shock. Nikki and Jack are caught in an unmistakably intimate moment, stripped not only of privacy but of dignity, exposed in the most devastating sense of the word. There is no room for interpretation, no opportunity for retreat. The scene itself becomes an accusation, one that words could never soften. Fear seizes Nikki and Jack instantly, not just because they have been discovered, but because of how they have been discovered. Victor does not shout. He does not lunge. Instead, he lifts the gun in his hand, the weapon a silent reminder of how quickly humiliation could turn into death. In that suspended second, Nikki understands with terrifying clarity that Victor is capable of anything. The gun is not waved or used theatrically, it is held with controlled precision, as though he is measuring not whether he could kill them, but whether he should. Jack's instincts scream at him to move, to shield Nikki, to say something, and I think the weight of Victor's gaze renders him immobile. This is not a confrontation between rivals. This is an execution delayed by calculation. Then Victor makes a choice that is somehow worse than violence. Slowly, deliberately, he lowers the gun and replaces it with his phone. The shift is chilling. Death would have been final, but what Victor chooses instead is exposure, humiliation, and punishment without end. He begins to record, capturing not just the image but the terror, the shame, and the irreversible collapse of the moment. Nikki realizes what this means before Jack does. This is not evidence meant for justice. It is leverage. It is a weapon designed to outlive the moment, to haunt her, to be replayed in her mind long after the recording ends. Victor is not interested in rage alone, wants control, and he wants retribution. Diane cannot look away, even though every instinct tells her to. She witnesses the cost of proximity to Victor Newman in its rawest form, understanding now that his cruelty does not erupt impulsively but unfolds with intent. This is not about catching a betrayal. It is about ensuring that Nikki will never recover from it. Victor says nothing because silence is more effective than any threat. The phone continues to record, each second carving deeper into Nikki's sense of self. Each breath she takes another reminder that this humiliation has been preserved, cataloged, and owned by the man she once trusted to protect her. When Victor finally lowers the phone, the damage is already done. The room feels smaller, tainted, as though the walls themselves have absorbed what just occurred. Nikki knows, with crushing certainty, that there will be no private reckoning, no quiet divorce, no dignity left to salvage. Whatever Victor plans to do with this footage will define the next chapter of her life, and it will not be merciful. Jack, standing beside her, understands that this was never just them, it was about Victor reasserting dominance, reminding both of them that crossing him does not end in forgiveness, but in annihilation. As Victor turns to leave, the threat lingers heavier than any spoken vow. This is not over. It has only begun. And somewhere between the closing door and the echo it leaves behind, Nikki realizes the most terrifying truth of all. Victor Newman has decided that she will pay for this, not quickly, not quietly, but in a way that ensures she will never forget who holds the power and who now holds her fate.